We don't know if it's a coup d'etat or not coup d'etat. You know, sometimes democracy looks like this. So this is answering the question to the extent we can trust former President Steinmeier. So we are not imposing ourselves on the Europeans, and answered by President Putin must be considered in this regard. We are open for negotiations, but we are not going to run after them to beg them for these talks, especially since their background is negative, their ability to negotiate, to come to any agreements is negative. They had a chance, both in February 2013, they had a chance to resolve this crisis, and in February 2013 the agreement was violated and a coup d'etat took place, and then in February 2015 the Minsk Accords were signed, and in both cases Europeans were guarantors of these agreements, and they failed as guarantors and as good faith mediators. Yesterday, the White House stated that Chinese President Xi Jinping, during a meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump, expressed an interest in increasing oil purchases from the U.S. to reduce China's dependence on the situation in the Strait of Hormuz. Do you see this as a risk that it could lead to a reduction in China's purchases of Russian energy resources? And in your view, is the cooperation with China on a wide range of issues announced by the U.S. an attempt to drive a wedge between Moscow and Beijing? And how do you assess the likelihood of success for such actions by Washington? Well, so many thoughts you put into your question. We do not interfere with trade relations between the third countries. We have an agreement, multi-layered agreement between ourselves and the People's Republic of China, and it was endorsed by the government, by the parliament, and in all the areas of interstate relations, including we have other things. We have cooperation and trade and the economy, and part of this agreement is energy supplies. And based on these agreements, we carry out all our obligations, and China carries out its obligations. And we do not ask the Chinese to discuss their plans of relations with the other countries with us, and China does not approach us with similar requests. If there are any agreements or they will reach agreement, I mean Beijing and Washington, if it's in the interest of our Chinese friends, we will be happy for them, but we will never be a part of any games. I think it was Henry Kissinger who said it first, that relations between Washington and Moscow and Beijing, these relations must be better than relations between Moscow and Beijing. Well, that's the game that Americans and other colonialists have been playing for years, divide and conquer. It is quite popular in the Western politics, but this is not our method. This is not the method that is pursued by the People's Republic of China. We have relations with China, and a number of occasions President Putin and President Xi Jinping said this, and also during their summits they said this. These relations are much deeper, much stronger than traditional military political alliances. These are relations of a new type. And these relations stabilize global politics, global economy, more than anything else, more than any other factor. RBC, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio stated that the U.S. plans to China to exert pressure on Iran with the aim of resolving the conflict, including the issue of unblocking the Strait of Hormuz. How do you view this approach? Have you discussed this with your colleagues within the BRICS framework? Are there any plans to engage with the Chinese side to discuss the outcome of Donald Trump's visit to Beijing and the agreements reached there? We are not aware of any attempts by the United States to get China to do something like that. If we speak about the gist of what you described, to have China help the Americans to deblock the Strait of Hormuz, I would like to say once again, the Strait of Hormuz was not blocked. It was open for safe navigation until February 28th, when for the second time in 6 months, the U.S. and Israel launched aggression against the Islamic Republic of Iran. And what would Americans want from China in this situation? It is difficult for me to understand. So we started something, we are at the dead end now. Now we need to deblock energy supplies, fertilizer supplies, food supplies via the Strait of Hormuz, but we cannot really do that. We cannot really succeed. Iran refuses. Please exert pressure on Iran. Well, it looks quite simplistic. I don't think that this is how international diplomacy should look like. The main thing is to eliminate the root cause. The root cause is clear to everyone. You can read it from the articles or even in the cartoons that the Western newspapers are publishing now. You can learn it from there. Minister Lavrov, how are relations with Armenia being managed at ministerial level today, given the latest events and statements by Nikol Pashinyan? Well, we have existing relations with Armenia, and these relations are close, these are allied relations, but they're also difficult at the same time, considering how the West is trying to pull Armenia, as well as some other CIS members. They are trying to pull it into their sphere of influence to make it break the beneficial trade, investment, and economic ties with their CIS partners or Eurasian Economic Union partners. On April 1st, when President Putin received Prime Minister Pashinyan at the Kremlin, he said it bluntly: we will respect any choice that our Armenian friends would make, but at the same time we need to understand that within the Eurasian Economic Union we cannot continue cooperating if Armenia, as they declare at the top level, if Armenia will be put on the path of joining the European Union, because the trade regimes and many other things, they exclude each other. You cannot be a part of both organizations. And Alexei Verchuk, Deputy Prime Minister of Russia, said as much during his statements, and we are saying this openly to our Armenian friends. This is our duty as allies to explain how economic integration processes are working in the modern world, and what's the difference between Eurasian Economic Union and the European Union. And judging by how the negotiations on acceding to the European Union between Brussels and our Serbian friends are unfolding currently, one of the conditions that is given to any country that wants to become closer to the European Union or to join the European Union, one of the conditions is to join the foreign policy decisions made by the EU. And at the current stage, the EU's foreign policy is blatant Russophobia. And I believe that our Armenian counterpart also know this, and they will take this into consideration. And I have good personal relations, good contacts with my Armenian counterpart, Minister Mirzoyan. We maintain contact mostly by phone. We had a CIS ministerial meeting, and Armenia was represented by the deputy minister, but I also know him well. And he was an active part of the discussion to prepare the final documents of that summit. So I think we will have a good chance to discuss the issues we are facing because of the European Union insisting on pulling Armenia into its orbit of influence. And it's happening at the risk of those benefits that Armenia enjoys being part of the Eurasian Economic Union. We will have a chance to discuss all these matters, all these issues later in May, during the last week of May, when the Supreme Eurasian Economic Union Council will hold its summit in Kazakhstan. But from what I heard, Prime Minister Pashinyan mentioned that he's too busy with his election campaign and he will not be able to attend this summit of the Eurasian Economic Union. Well, that would be really sad, because that would be a good opportunity to discuss all the things, all the matters that are being floated currently. Good afternoon, Minister Lavrov, RT France. Recently, Emmanuel Macron has stated that Russia are a true colonizer in Africa. How would you comment on such assessments by the French leadership? Well, the French should know how real colonialism look like and how real colonizers look like. I believe some 5 years ago, when changes took place in the Sahel countries, in Mali in particular, I was at the UN General Assembly, and on the sidelines of UN General Assembly, there are always a lot of bilateral meetings, and I had a meeting with Josep Borrell. At the time, he was what Kai Kallas is now. And during that meeting, Foreign Minister of France was also present, Le Drian, I believe his name is. And since Mali was, well, a hot topic of the international agenda, they started saying, well, how is it possible that you supported this change of government and so on and so forth, and among other arguments, because I was saying, well, okay, the new government approached us with the request to help to ensure with the reforms to strengthen security. We just respond to their request. And during the General Assembly plenary session, I repeated the same thing. And then my counterparts, the Foreign Minister of France and Josep Borrell, they said, well, you know that Sahel and Africa, this is our territory, the European Union's territory. I said, no, I don't know this. I know that you had colonies in there, but then the independence was declared, you ceased the colonization, there is a resolution by the United Nations, and I don't believe that former colonies are yours forever, where other countries have no right to enter, to be there. But that's the philosophy they had. I believe it's in their DNA, in the DNA of our French counterparts, and this is how they measure everyone else. And we have a different system of measurement. Thank you.